Well, hey there everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe. So after doing a number of episodes of me wandering the streets of Montreal, just exploring in general, thought I'd do another episode back home and had an idea for a little something I could put together for everyone. So some of my viewers have probably encountered me wandering around in action when I'm doing my episodes, and actually some of you have collaborated with me and got to see a bit of the process. So what I thought I would do today for those who haven't collaborated or seen me is I would give you a little overview of some of the gear that I use and what exactly I use to go and put together one of these episodes. Now, this is going to be a little bit technical in some ways, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. And one thing too is this is not going to be a definitive way of putting together a vlog because everyone's going to have their own styles. There's a lot more equipment you can find on the market. This is just going to be like an overview of what I started with, what I use that works best for me, and also some of the pitfalls I might have run into in the past when I was trying to get to know a lot of the equipment that's out there. And on that note, we're going to jump right into things. So first up, I'm not going to be talking about how I started the YouTube channel because I did actually cover that pretty extensively in episode 100. So if you want, you can click on the card on the top right corner to revisit that one and see how I started to do the videos and how it kind of progressed into the full episodes I do to this day. But for the humble beginnings, just like everybody else on the planet who was recording videos, I started using my cell phone because it was the most easily available contraption I had, because cell phones these days are amazing. Unlike the older ones that I had where they were flip phones, you could get pixelated pictures, or if you want to go even further than that, they were just these Motorola bricks that had a huge antenna on here. You got a lot of good features on this. So what I was doing at first was just me holding it up like this and then just going to record while I'm wandering around. And actually, if you were to give me 1 second. So this is how I used to record my videos, just like this, holding the camera up like that. There were some drawbacks because the way that my hand is being held up right now, it is a little bit tiring. So having to do that for an entire day, it would be kind of exhausting. Plus, I would have to make sure I hold it with my right hand because the way this thing is working. If I use the left hand, I might not be facing the lens right here. And as a result, it'll kind of look like I'm staring this way or staring off to the distance like here when I want to be staring directly at the camera and look like I'm talking to you. Take note of the frame rate also because that's actually one of the other things I changed up. So 30 frames per second is actually how I started to record my videos when I was doing it on my phone, and it actually carried into the camcorder also that I was using, but we're going to get to that in a little bit and show you how it's changed from the beginning until the end. But it was a little bit of an improvement when I did my trip to Italy, because what I had done was I ended up picking up one of these for myself. It's almost like a selfie stick, but it's like a little, almost like a tripod, well maybe not a tripod because tripods will have 3 legs to hold it in place. So the idea with this is that you would be holding onto your camera with the rod like this, and then these things kind of slide, so you just push it on upwards, oops, and then lock it into place. So the idea is that you would see me walking around with this in hand, and instead of me looking like I'm looking like this, I'll be holding it right here and being a little bit more at eye level. So it actually let me stretch out a little bit because, so as you can see, there's a bit of a difference now. I'm a lot more center. You can see a bit more of my upper torso, and my hand is not raised like this because this is giving an idea of where my hand was if I was holding the cell phone here. It makes a huge difference. So it gives me a little bit more control and maneuverability. And my hand's not going to be as tired too. So it does add up. Little benefits that come here and there. Of course, this stick is only used whenever I'm going to be wandering about, because the other thing I would use too is a mini tripod like this. This one's like nothing too fancy, just something that you could stand up, hold your cell phone in, and then sometimes you could adjust the angle where you could go a little bit upwards depending on if you're on a countertop that's a little too close, and etc. And most of these are going to have these metal threaded connections that all you got to do is twist them around until they're in place. But there are some of them where they're going to have a different connection, like you slide it in and then lock in place on a rod. These things I kind of got as part of a vlogging kit when I was trying to get into this using my cell phone. Came with a microphone, came with a light, but it definitely wasn't as sturdy enough. But you know, for someone who was just trying to get into vlogging, it did help out a lot. Of course, as time went on, I realized that using a cell phone was fun, but it did have its drawbacks. The big one is the battery power, because if you have an old phone, you know that your battery's going to be weakened after at least a year. And if I'm going to be walking around with this, if I want to take a phone call, text someone, I have to realize, oh shoot, I got 30% left after all my recording. I can't really do much. And even if you have a portable battery that you could plug into here, and there's only so much I can give back compared to if you plug it into a wall. And the other thing too is some microphones I was using in this, there were times that I had it plugged in, I was doing my recording, but I came across some static or some interference that was kind of causing a buzz in the background. Like, I don't know if it was cell phone waves that were causing that, but it did kind of annoy me when I was in post-production. Not to mention too that a lot of cell phones, they only have one jack right now. Like, it's not going to be easy to see on camera, but I have a Samsung Galaxy S20, and that uses a USB-C plug. So it's not going to be the same as what you get on an Apple or other devices. And the craziest thing is there isn't even a 3.5 millimeter jack on this anymore. To put it in the technical terms, actually I probably have a good example in here. 3.5 millimeter jack is just this little sucker. You know, your typical headphone jack, microphone jack that you would have found in all these old electronics, Discmans, Walkmans, if you really want to go that far back. So there was always going to be limitations of how I could get it done, and that's when I decided to go for brand new equipment. So the question is, can I make this work and show you what I'm using? Okay, so this is a case where I had to use my camera again on my cell phone so I could get this properly recorded. Oh, wait a minute, I seem to have messed up. I'm at 30 frames per second. So this gives you an idea of what 30 frames per second looks like. It's not as smooth as you would see on some YouTube videos, so there is a little bit of a lag, and it seems like I'm running a little bit slow, and that's kind of how my earlier videos used to be before I really upgraded the equipment. But I'll be needing 1 second, and I'm switching back. Okay, that's much better. See, frame rate makes a big difference, and it's how a lot of my quality had jumped, as people have pointed out. So if you're wondering what I use to record my videos, I did end up going for a little bit of equipment right here, and this is the one. So to give you an idea of the box, this here is the Canon Vixia HFR 800. So something like this is actually considered an entry-level camcorder if you want to get into recording video outside of your cell phone. And if you want to see what the size of it is, here it is. I know, if you're like my age, you're probably amazed at how small these things are these days. Because when I was growing up, we did have a camcorder we used to use, and it kind of looked something like this size, where you had one of these small tapes that you would put like into a VHS adapter, put it in here, and then you'd be able to watch it, or you can make a copy for yourself. So they've come a long way. And actually, I remember I was doing one video. Yeah, this is when I was doing my Buvette Bull Bien video. I was walking along the streets, I was doing the recording, and a random bus driver actually stopped me to say, oh my God, is that a camcorder? It's so small. Because yeah, this is what it looks like now. And if you're wondering how you store your stuff here, easy. You just open it up, and right in here is going to be a slot to put an SD card, or you can even do a micro SD card too if that's your style. And there's no limit. I use 120 gigabytes of memory here. It probably sounds like a foreign language to you, but that's just, I need a lot of memory if I'm going to be doing recording with this thing. And is this one good? Well, let me put it this way. You're going to find a lot of good ones, like high quality camcorders on the market that are going to cost you like maybe a couple $100, like $800, $900, sometimes even the $1,000 range. I've seen some for about $4,000, crazy enough. But for like an introductory vlogger, this one is serviceable to a degree. I got this one at Staples for about $200, and it was an open box one. Actually, no, it was less than $200. And Staples is what you call a bureau en gros if you don't live in Quebec, just in case you're wondering what it is. It served its purpose, but again, there are some limitations here. For one thing, you're going to take note that I have this little contraption under here. That's not part of the camera. That's something I had to use with duct tape, because most of your threaded connections here, I'm going to give you a good view. A good one is going to be using metal connections but for some reason they kind of cheaped out on here and used plastic on the inside, which doesn't seem like it could be a big deal, but when you're unscrewing it, screwing it back in countless times, and if you accidentally cross the threads in here, you would risk of breaking it. That's actually what happened to mine. I did try to get that repaired or try to replace the coil myself, but I didn't do anything. Maybe down the road, if I want to spend a bit more, I can maybe get something that's a bit stronger. So here's what you would do. So essentially, I would be using the same kind of setup for myself. I would be screwing it in here, and then I would be recording. Okay, to record, first off, when you open up your camera, this lens cover would probably open automatically on a high-end one. Me, I have to open it up manually. So that's another one of my drawbacks. So open this. And this is the screen that I have. So I can keep it this way if I'm going to be filming something from afar. Like if I'm going to be filming, in that direction. Or the other beauty is that I could be facing the camera and I can rotate the screen like this. And then that means I can get a view of what I look like when I'm recording. As you can see right here, this is how it's looking when I record. So this is what I was using before, where it was about 30 frames per second. And once again, you can kind of tell that there is a bit of a lag when it's moving around. That's like normal, but there are some other reasons for that too that you have to keep in mind if you're using this one. So one of the things to remember too is that the lens here is not going to be very wide, so you're kind of limited to how much you can actually capture. Like you won't be able to get a huge wide panoramic shot with it. And also you got to check your settings too to make sure you're using the right one. There are filters in here that make it look like you're recording cinematic stuff, which will have a bit of a lag in the picture. That's just the reality of it, because I remember seeing, this is like a weird thing I remembered at the Best Buy. Some older films or even like recent films would be shown on it, but the way they calibrated their high definition TVs are so weird that everything was moving fast, almost to the point that it was unnatural. So you have to always keep that in mind when you're filming, but film or cinema is always going to be a lower frame rate. But what I ended up doing instead, let me just go to the options on here, is I just go under my video quality. Okay, currently I have this set to 24 megabits per second, so that's higher quality, 30 frames per second, but it's not going to be the best one. I did a huge jump to 35, so you got it at basically 60 frames per second. So if I was going to be recording it like that, it's going to look a little bit like this. So you could probably see there's a bit more smoothness with my movements and the way that I'm speaking. But something else I got to keep in mind too is the lighting around here, because if I have a nice, natural lighting, like if I'm outdoors on the bright sunny terrace, that's where this thing shines completely. Indoors, it works if I have enough light around here. Otherwise, if I'm going to be walking, something I remember doing before was, you could probably see that as an example. So if I'm turning on a dim street that doesn't have too much street lights, you may notice a little bit of slowdown with the footage. So that's another drawback, is I'm not going to have a consistent quality with this unless I'm always lit up. And speaking of light up, there's something else you could probably use for yourself if you do a lot of vlogs on your cell phone or even on your, like a camcorder or other device that you use. I would recommend getting one of these LED lights. They're pretty handy to have. I think this thing cost me like 25 bucks, so I didn't need anything too expensive if I'm going to be, let's say, indoors working in the kitchen. The good thing too is that it can plug into any outlet if you have an adapter, or if not, you just remove this and it's a USB key that you could put into probably your computer, any other devices, or even into your outlets. Because I'm seeing a lot nowadays that outlets have USB adapters in there too, so you can plug anything into that. It's pretty incredible how much it works. Now, I could just give you a quick example. So if I was to plug it in, I've been able to choose between 3 settings. So I got cold white, I got, I think, neutral white, and, oh, actually that's cold white. So I think there's one that's neutral, warm, and cold. Okay, so that one was cold, this is neutral, and this is probably warm, so that's a way to work it. So that's why I have this glow sometimes. If it looks unnatural, it's because I need to light myself up. So while this tripod I'm using for my cell phone could be sufficient if I'm sitting down having a drink or supper and then I'm recording, it's not going to be handy for anywhere else in the house or if I'm in my yard, because the truth is that with that kind of tripod, you're limited to counter space, table space, so that means you have to be creative sometimes with your stuff. So that means that you probably would need some other kind of equipment too for this. Now, I use one of these over here. It's what brand is it? A Newer tripod. So what this thing has is it's got extendable legs, and I believe I can actually get this to stretch up by about like 7 feet if I'm not mistaken. So it's insane just how high this thing goes. You probably wouldn't need to extend this by 7 feet high, and if you do, you're probably very special. But what you do, I should probably show this. This is another adapter that you would use on here that you could twist into the camcorder. And the idea is that you just slide it in like this, and then you just tighten it up like that. And this will let you hold it in place, and it lets you record from anywhere that you wanted to. So that's how, if you see a camera like in the middle of my kitchen or a random part of my yard, or if I'm on my deck, this is how. This makes it even easier to record. But all that to say that even with all this gear, there is another drawback too with the lighting. And this is probably true for anyone with a camcorder, is the sound quality. Because right on here, I'm trying to get a good view of this. Okay, you see over here, there's 2 sets of 4 holes in that. Those are your internal microphones. And the sound quality in here, it's okay if I'm going to be talking directly in this, but the further away I am, the harder it is to capture stuff. And it's a twofold problem too, is I would have to, if I want to use background music, I would have to put it really low in the mix so that it doesn't drown out my voice. And the other thing is I risk being drowned out by the volume of my surroundings. I think I remember having that problem when I was doing one of my first recordings on the Mount Royal. This was back in 2022.
Hiking. I forgot how much walking this would have taken. So whatever beers I've had in the last few days.
Any wind, any environmental noise on here would be picked up on here, and that would also drown me out. So that meant that I needed to get myself an external microphone that I could hook up into here. And if you want to know which one I used, well, here it is. I was looking around for something for my scenario and came across the ProMaster LM1 omnidirectional lavalier microphone. It just seems like it's a fancy way of calling it a lapel microphone. This thing was exactly what I needed at the time to do my videos, and I'm going to explain to you in a second why that. So it's a pretty simple setup. So you got your cord here. This thing is going to be around, I would say 3 feet long. But the other thing this came with was a huge extension cable that if you were to combine it all together, you can get this to stretch out for about 20 feet. So that's how I was able to extend myself, have a bit of distance between me and the camera when recording, and you could get like full body shots of me with this. But sometimes I found this thing was a bit cumbersome to work with. Now, I mentioned the drawback with this. Here it is. Well, first what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to open this up. I'm going to put the microphone in here. Then I'm going to take the lapel part, attach to my jacket, and we're going to record. Yeah, I forgot. There's actually one key thing to remember with these kind of microphones and with these kind of camcorders. One warning, especially with the Vixia, is that you need to have a microphone with an external power source too, because that's the thing is with a cell phone, the cell phone's going to power up their microphone right away, so that's not an issue. You'll take note on here that there's 2 settings. You have a switch set to down, it's going to go to the cell phone, but then if you move it upwards, then it's going to be set up for a DSLR camera. I keep forgetting what the DSLR stands for, but it's essentially what you need to do to be able to use an external microphone on this camera, because you need something that has its own power source. We're not talking about a lot of power, like you're talking about 3 volts maximum, and what I would have here is there's a battery in here that would feed power directly into the camcorder. So that's how I was able to do a lot of my recordings here and get a much clearer sound. Good stuff. And it only cost me about $40 Canadian, so not the end of the world. but I did run into some other drawbacks too, which was the battery. I think this takes like a CR2032 battery, which is like a fancy way of using one of those lithium round batteries. But when it dies, or maybe it's a full disclosure that it wasn't, not everyone is going to have the same problem as me. This was just for me. So I would have the battery in here that I would try to replace, and yet when I tried to do it, it just didn't seem to work at all for me. Which meant that I had to go look for a brand new microphone for myself. And I was thinking at the time that maybe I can just go for the same one, but you're also limited too because, again, you need something with an external source. Oh yeah, and I guess I could use this as a full disclosure too. This is just applying to me because anyone else is going to be doing, let's say, streaming on Twitch. Maybe they're going to be doing some podcasting. Maybe they're just sitting at home doing their vlogs. There's a good chance they might have their microphone that has an AC adapter they can plug into the wall, or it might be plugged into like a mixing board along with their camera or other accessories. So their setup is going to be a little bit different. For my purposes, when I'm walking the streets, that's just a setup that works best for me. I wouldn't need to have a battery-powered microphone to get this job done. And the funny thing is that this kind of battery-powered mic, it was few and far between, to tell you the truth. Very few of them are around. I could find plenty of lavalier microphones without the battery, but the powered ones, that's a different story. So that means we move on to the latest gear that I decided to use for myself. So I'm going for the Rode Wireless Me one. So yeah, this was actually pretty exciting for me. I went into the world of wireless. I figured if I was going to be going a bit long-term with this, I'd rather get something that'll last a bit longer instead of me having to replace it every couple of years or however long. This thing, it charges on its own. You just hook it up to a USB and you're good to go with it. And this stuff is awesome. Essentially, you're going to have two pieces in here. You got the microphone itself, which is the transmitter. I'll just take this, and this is the receiver. So this is the part that's going to be capturing your sound and transmitting it into your video footage when you're recording. This is just a single one, but you can actually get some of them on the market where there's two transmitters to go with a receiver, which means you can actually do these interviews with other people and you're good to go with it. But this thing is pretty good even if I'm with a group of people. And actually my episodes I did at Shea Ernest with two of my friends, you can click on the top right corner to see that one. That's a good example of me using the wireless mic, and then you can capture all of our sound. Okay, one more drawback for me with this. I have the clip that I can hold on to on the strap on here, but a good camcorder will probably have what's called a cold shoe mount. I know, it sounds like a weird phrase. Don't ask me how they came up with that. Essentially, it's a little mount that would be on top where you could put a microphone, you can put lighting or whatever accessory here. And then you just take that, attach it here. Oh, right. First, what I gotta do is I gotta pair this up. There's a button on each one of these, so what you wanna do is press and hold for about 3 seconds until you get a solid light on each one. So there's a light here, and there's a light here. And now, and there you go. This is the power of wireless microphones now. So that means that I'm not limited to a wire or have to worry about dragging that around. It means I can actually record with this a pretty good distance away. So it does give me a lot more flexibility, I find. And from what I saw too, you can actually be a decent amount of feet away from the receiver to be able to record. So that means technically I could have the camera right here and be a good distance away, like several feet away, without having to lose a signal. You know what? I actually haven't even done that yet. And considering I plan to do some more videos in the backyard while barbecuing, I'm gonna probably need to make sure that works. So what I'll do is I'll give this a quick test. Okay, so this is gonna be my typical setup if I'm in the kitchen, if I'm gonna be doing recording while doing a recipe from start to finish. So I'll be this kind of distance away. But like I said, usually I'll have some kind of a cord that's gonna be hindering me and I have to work around it. And I think I might have found that that cord would have some static from time to time if it's dragging around. But as you can see here, I'm going to be going a good distance from here. And I believe I can go right in back of my table and you should still hear some pretty good sound. So this is actually where I was sitting to record all the video segments before we did this final setup. And judging by the look of it, I can see the monitor on my screen on the camcorder, I'm getting some good sound. So there you have it. This is what I use to do my vlogs. This probably gives you a better idea of what it goes into recording an episode, not to mention some of the gear, and there's actually a lot more that gets involved in than people realize. Now, if you're going to be asking me if I ever plan to do a video on how I edit the episodes, that could be feasible, but it's going to take a little bit more effort than this one, and I'm going to need some time before I get to that and start thinking about it. The only thing I'm going to tell you right now is, thanks for watching this latest edition of the Ukie Cheese Cafe, the Tech Corner. So if you like what you see, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoy my wanders, my discovery of beer, and even this little explanation of what I do to put my videos together. And if you have an idea for an episode, leave in the comments section. I'll see what I could do. Till then, take care, and I'll see you next time, whether in the kitchen, the yard, or somewhere on the streets finding a new spot. Yeah, I know. You probably expect me to be drinking a beer right now, but it is Monday when I'm recording this. Even Monday needs to be a dry day. Wait, just 1 second. Yeah, sorry, I almost forgot like one little element here. This thing is worthwhile if you want to do some videos, but there's definitely some other equipment if you want to take it a little bit more seriously, and I guess if you also want to start monetizing your videos. But, you know, for my purposes, I don't make money off of it. This is just a hobby to show off what I do. But do I still use my cell phone? And the answer is yes. It's for two reasons. One, if I'm going to be doing some shots around, let's say I'm in a bar, or if I want to get some night shots, I still use this because the lighting on here is actually way better to capture it than it is on the camcorder. And to tell you the truth, I've seen that sometimes people are weirded out if I'm recording with a camcorder instead of a cell phone. This thing, it still gets the job done. But the other thing I use it for is my YouTube shorts. So what I would typically be doing is I would film vertically, all because that's how they recommend it, because apparently people are so lazy with their phones that they're not going to watch a video this way. They're just going to watch it this way. So that's why your YouTube shorts, Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, TikToks, if you know you're into that, that's why they do it that way. And you do it for a minute or less because people like to watch a whole bunch of 1 minute films as opposed to watching something like me where they're going to be doing 20, 30, 40 minutes depending on the subject matter. But you know, for what I like to do where I'm wandering the streets, finding bars, restaurants, coffee shops, telling stories, and just exploring, I just feel like the mini movie format that I use is the one that works best for me. Your mileage may vary, all depends on what you want to do for your vlogging. So that's that. Take care, everybody.